of months ago, we examined a book based on spiritual wisdom that originated in southern Mexico, thousands of years ago. With a group of artists and scientists called the Toltec, and that book is called The Four Agreements. It is written by Toltec master Don Miguel Ruiz, and in the book, Ruiz shares what he calls the art of transformation, which he believes will move us from living in a mind state of hell on earth to a mind state of heaven on earth. And the premise of the book is that we have learned to live our lives satisfying other people's demands. As you said in your song, watching and being aware of the people looking over our shoulders. We've learned to live according to their points of view because of the fear of not being accepted and of not being good enough. And using reward and punishment in much the same way as we would train a pet, we've become domesticated into behaving and conforming in society according to society's norms. The problem is, over time, we pretend to be what we are not so much that we forget who we really are, and we assimilate into the belief system of these environments we live in. And in effect, we make agreements, we make beliefs about how we should behave and what we should value. Then we learn to judge and punish others and ourselves according to that established standard of behavior. We have an image of what that perfect behavior should look like, and then, because we're human, we inevitably fail. We start feeling not good enough, we don't deserve happiness, and we fall into the role of a victim. As a result, many of us believe that it is normal to suffer, to live in fear, to live in pain, and to be surrounded by drama. We've come to believe that it is normal to live in hell with an accompanying sense of powerlessness. Ruiz defines heaven, and I quote, as a place that exists within our mind. It is a place of joy, a place where we are happy, where we are free to love and to be who we really are. End quote. Doesn't that sound wonderful? To be in a place where we can express who we really are, free of any encumbrances in our minds and judgments from ourselves and others. Is that heaven on earth? Sounds good to me. But it's scary because we have to break some of those agreements and beliefs that have helped us to grow to where we are now. According to Ruiz, again, our biggest fear is taking the risk to live this fully, to express who we really are. Even when we know that there might be a better way, even when there's a still small voice inside us that says, there's something different you could do here, there's a different way of thinking, we tend to resist because we're afraid. And sometimes it's easier to live with the devil you know than to be willing to open ourselves up to the devil we don't. It leads to a feeling of literally physical fear, sickness in our stomach, tightness in our throat, accelerated heartbeat. Who wants to feel that uncomfortable? It's easier to go back. So it does take courage, determination, continued awareness to break some old agreements and then to replace them with new ones. And Ruiz has identified 4 agreements that he believes, if we can master them, will lead us to a place where we can create heaven on earth in our spaces right here, right now. They are what he calls the art of transformation. And the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Now, we've spoken in previous talks about the first 2 agreements, so I won't spend a lot of time on them. Be impeccable with your word. Our word is the power to create. What we say, what we think, is what we expect and what we will receive. Back up. Being impeccable with our word means that we never speak, think, or do anything that goes against us and the people around us. Impeccability is heaven. Do what you say what you mean. All of it is consciousness. Second agreement. The second agreement was, don't take anything personally. And the underlying message of this agreement was, nothing that anybody does to us is because of us. It's all a result of their own consciousness. And how we choose to receive it then becomes a reflection of our own consciousness. So, don't take anything personally. It has nothing to do with us. That brings us to agreement number 3. Don't make assumptions. Now, when I first read the 4 agreements, I could clearly understand why be impeccable with your word is agreement number 1. That made sense to me. I could also understand intellectually anyway, certainly not in practice. Don't take anything personally. I could get and see the freedom that might come if I could actually integrate that into my belief system. It took me a while to understand why, out of all the myriad agreements that Ruiz could choose in 4, he would pick don't make any assumptions. Why is it that don't make assumptions is so important? I started to think, though, it wasn't that long ago that people assumed that the world was flat. It wasn't that long ago that people who were not Caucasian were viewed as inferior. Or, for that matter, women were not intelligent to work, not intelligent enough to vote, or gasp, not intelligent enough to run as President of the United States. These assumptions that we have made have created all kinds of pain, sometimes murder, and yet they're not true. Don't make assumptions is important because when we make assumptions, we make judgments. And when we make judgments, we set ourselves into a right and wrong. Somebody is a winner, somebody is a loser. There is anger, there is hatred, there is polarization, there is separation. And that leads to all manner of pain. What happens when we assume? We create a meaning about another person's words, their actions, or their lack of action. Then we take the meaning that we've created personally. Then then we react. We retaliate either by saying or thinking something negative about the other person, or reacting emotionally in some way and not wanting to be with them anymore. And then we find out that just like that planet being flat versus being round, that our assumptions may have been false. All that energy and time was wasted. We create stories that may have no basis in reality with our assumptions. Anybody remember the movie Whatever Happened to Davy Jane? 1962? Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. I actually have never seen the movie, but I've heard the line and I've read the synopsis, and I don't think I want to see this movie. It sounds awful. But let's just say that Jane operates under a false assumption about her disabled sister. And as a result, for years, she treats her sister in a very abusive manner, physically and emotionally. At the end of the movie, she realizes that her assumption has been wrong all this time. And she says the famous words, "You mean all this time we could have been friends?" I'm sure that we have all been witness to interactions where relationships have been damaged in this way. If we're lucky, we get to heal and re-establish the relationship and become friends again and connected again. Sometimes it's too late. Either because the person has moved or passed away. Sometimes either party doesn't know how to overcome the hurt fear and the relationship never recovers. What we know, though, in the meantime, is that a lot of energy and time may have been missed and spent in ill feeling for no reason. All of the assumptions we make are a result of the stories that we make up in our minds. How do we create a new agreement in which we stop making assumptions? I think of it as an assumption mind field. I like it. How do we navigate our mind field? Remember, our goal is to create heaven in our human experience. What happens when we make an assumption? Normally it's because we're afraid to ask a question. What happens when we're afraid? We place ourselves in a state of anxiety and fear. That is hell on earth. The truth will set us free. So, to avoid being hurt in the minefield of our assumptions, we need to find the courage to ask and then discern whether the meaning we are assigning is story or truth. C-A-S-T. You know me and all my mnemonics. Courage to ask. Is it a story or is it true? Just this week, I spoke to a gentleman who'd been married for 18 years to his high school sweetheart. They just recently split up because he finally found the courage to ask her if she would consider having children. And she finally found the courage to say no. And he finally found the courage to say, I love you, but I want to have children. Feel the fear. Do it anyway. What are the stories that we tell ourselves that prevent us from asking for what we need? We become vulnerable. We fear that the other person will say no. And if they say no, we may tell ourselves that we're not worthy of a yes. We tell ourselves that there's a lot riding on their answer, and it has to do with what we take as our esteem. But what is the truth? The truth is, if a person declines our request, maybe it's because they are being so impeccable with their word that they can say what they want. We can then invoke agreement number 2 and choose not to take it personally. We can clarify, then do it ourselves if the need is ours, not theirs. We can decide to let it go if the relationship needs more than the need. Or we can decide to leave the whole experience. We take responsibility for what we want and what we need, with no need for any extraneous stories that we create about why the other person isn't towing our line. Hell looks like if they, my family, my children, my spouse, my employer, if they love me, they will know what I need and they will give it to me. The mind field of a mind reader doesn't work. The heaven consciousness is, because I love them, I will tell them what I need and ask them to give it to me. Let's look at what we do when we don't understand something. Teacher says, does anybody have any questions? Everybody keeps their hands down. Everybody is secretly wishing to put their hands up because they don't understand. What's the story we're telling ourselves? We're telling ourselves that asking for clarification means that we are incompetent, that we are weak, that we are wrong. The truth is, we serve no one until we serve everyone. To grow and thrive, we must be willing to accept and declare and be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. Winston Churchill said, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. When we are asking in a place where we need more information and we are faced with a choice, our choice needs to be, have the courage to ask, reject the story, and accept the truth. Hell, I should know this already. Heaven, help me to understand. Tell me more. And so, as always when it comes to unity and when it comes to learning, we speak about these lessons largely with respect to how we deal with the outer world. Don't make assumptions in our relationships. We ask questions so that we have clarity from the people who we are in relationship with. We ask for what we need so that there's clarity and they don't have to make assumptions for us. All of that is on the outer. The power is what we do on the inner. The power is, and the true growth, is learning to look inside and challenging what our assumptions are inside. Again, we use courage to ask and find out if what we're assuming is story or truth. In our relationship with ourselves, in our minds, is where that minefield of assumptions lies. And in Romans, we are told, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Everything has to do with how we choose to see it. Let's shift and transform what we're doing up here. Everything else will fall into place. What does that look like? When we find that we're reluctant to ask for a need, or we're reluctant to ask for clarification, we can identify that as an opportunity for us to grow. It's a place where we have a fear-based response, and there's an opportunity to learn and to heal. If we can have the courage to ask ourselves what story we're telling ourselves, what assumptions we are making, then we can challenge ourselves about whether that story is true, whether that belief agreement still serves us, and at that point we get to choose the new agreement. In essence, we disempower that minefield of assumptions as soon as we recognize that we're making an assumption. It's a fear-based response, and we have an opportunity to shift it. Here are some of the stories that we tell ourselves. Their needs are greater than mine. My opinion doesn't count. I have to do it my way, their way, or they won't like me. I don't deserve it. Those are stories. The truth is, I am a brilliant, creative expression of God energy with unique gifts and a wonderful life to live. I don't matter. How many people could truly stand up and shout that and believe it? There's a place for healing. It is for me. Another story. I believe that my way is the only right way. I need to show them how wrong they are. It's for their own good. The truth is, I believe this, and I would prefer this. They believe that, and they would prefer that. They are as entitled to their preference as I am to mine. It is not up to me to control, to manage, or to change anyone except myself. Neither do I need to accept anyone else's efforts to change, control, or manage me. The story behind all of these fear-based responses is, I'm scared. The truth is, I am worthy. At Unity, we believe that we are each of us expressions of divine God energy. By whatever definition we may have for that power that some of us call God, some call universal mind, some call the force, some call divine intelligence. By whatever name we have for God, it is our belief that there is only one. And that one power resides and expresses in, through, and around all of us. There is no spot that God is not. If we take that one step further, we must believe then that each of us contains that God energy within us and in fact is who we are. And if that is true, we can know that no person is greater or lesser than any other person. And no person's needs are greater or lesser than any other person. We are all one and we are all connected and we are all equal. That is the truth. We live from the consciousness of seeing God in every phase. When we clarify then, when we want to move away from assumption and we clarify, we have the opportunity to respond from a place of self-love, self-esteem, to a place of honoring the divine in the other person as well. That's a consciousness where everybody is honored and everybody gets to have their needs met. There is no winner-loser. The third agreement asks us to challenge the stories that we've made up, either when we do not have all the information or we don't want to look at the information that we have. Ruiz says, and I quote, "Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life." End quote. Let us learn that in a real way, as Theodore Roosevelt said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. If we know that we are good enough, that we are God enough, we would have no need to feel the fear of not enoughness when we ask for something that matters to us. We would have no need to feel fear of not enoughness when we're asking for more clarity. And we would have no need to fear when someone gracefully declines our requests. We would at that point have the opportunity to choose our response and lovingly release or adjust the relationship. There is no need to fill in the blanks with made-up stories. Let us honor ourselves, our neighbors, and that creative energy that we call God by treating ourselves and each other kindly. Let us respect that we are each different, and by freeing ourselves to express who we are with irrepressible joy, irrepressible love for life, let us honor ourselves, each other, and God. The truth is, I am